Welcome today to our Connect series here at New Song. My name is Melody, and I'm happy that you are joining us. We have been hearing some great stories during this series of connection in our community, outside of our community, all around us. And last week we got to hear about small businesses that our folks have supported during this pandemic time and have, made connections with and continue to have those connections develop. Today, I am so happy to be bringing you this segment on our Adopt a Student program that started during the 2020 pandemic as well. And it was just a great program that we're going to hear all about today. And I'm so excited for you to hear these stories of connection, but in particular, this one particular story we're going to hear about today. But before we get there, I would like to have my friend Marissa explain what the Adopt a Student program was and what it was comprised of. So let's take a listen to Marissa.
A lot of kids were getting a little tired of their online communication, and we were looking for a way to communicate with them, but through a different avenue. And we started doing deliveries and realized with the amount of students that we had, we couldn't keep that up, and just knew that some sort of a offline communication would be great. And so I was thinking, how can we mail them things, but then also get the help of the rest of the congregation too? And so this idea just kind of got born like a little pen pal or sponsoring a child. And I called up Melody and just said, hey, look at this idea. What do you think about it? And we birthed then the Adopt a Student program, and reached out to the parents, reached out to the congregation. There was just so many people who wanted to be involved with that, and it was great. The commitment for this was to December, even though the school year went on to June, but we just wanted to give it a doable amount of time for those who are sponsoring, and then also try to make it a little easier with ideas to come up with for those who maybe weren't familiar with the age group of child that they were sponsored with. We did give them a little get to know me sheet that gave them their ideas of likes and dislikes and just things that they were able to connect on. And so we also helped out with a goodie bag so they could send them little things in the mail if they wanted to, but the real goal was just communication, encouragement, prayer for their student. It wasn't about the things and the little items. It was more about just being seen and heard by someone else and not through a computer screen. The types of connection that we saw from this program were more than we could have even imagined. And things that we didn't even realize that we had these students and sponsors put together, that their interests and just things that they enjoyed, how they collided, and we didn't even realize. It was so encouraging, not only to the students, I think, and but also to the sponsors themselves. And there were just little instances here and there that the sponsors went above and beyond, and someone sent a pizza to their student, and there were just really neat ways that the sponsors were getting creative about reaching out to their students, and just a lot of connection that we were really excited to see and didn't even imagine was going to happen. And those little things, that was just so great to see God had his hand in this definitely all the time, and it wasn't so much what we were doing ourselves. the students were encouraged. I know the sponsors were, and we were as well. And I just would love to see this continue on. We are always looking for a way to reach out and do something new. And so just be on the lookout, because there might be something else that's going to happen and you're going to want to be a part of that.
So two of the people that got set up together were Tracy Stubblefield and Dylan Jones. And they had such a sweet connection and such a sweet story, and continue to do so.
So for us, school stopped. Like everybody else, we're thinking, 2 weeks, and then it's months. So, initially everyone's in the house, you're not going out. We have neighbors, but it was limited contact with neighbors. And the neighbors were much younger than my kids, but at least it was, some sort of contact. You're sitting at your home, you're living in your head, which is your own reality of what's happening. At some point, I can't look at social media, I can't look at news, because it's overwhelming. And it's probably going to be marked as the darkest time for the Jones family. A lot of, I'm so sorry that I didn't have patience, or I'm so sorry, that mommy was depressed, or mommy was having a bad day and said things she shouldn't have said. And, I remember just praying like, God, I don't even need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, but where's the hope? I need something. So then when I'm scrolling through my emails and, new song. Okay, what is this? And I'm reading through what it is, and I didn't think I had the capacity to sign up to be someone adopting a student. But I thought, wow, my kids could really use something outside of this bubble we're in, so that they can somehow feel connected. And so I didn't say anything to them. And I went through the questionnaire and kind of filled it out and kind of just hoped for the best, but not really looking too much into it.
I like to say yes to anything that I can handle, pretty much. I work at a school. I'm a special ed aide, and we were going to be learning online this year also, and I knew it was going to be a struggle. And I just wanted to be an encourager of students and see what I could do to be helpful.
Before I heard about it, my mom never told me. She just said, well, someone's going to come around and drop off packages. I was like, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it like an adult? And she said, well, you'll find out. And that made me kind of wonder.
I got a picture of Dylan and a little bio, and he was going to be a 10-year-old boy. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do with a 10-year-old boy? I mean, I've had a son before, but it had been a long time. And I just thought, okay, Lord, we'll just see where this goes. I didn't meet Dylan right away. I mean, because of COVID and things that were happening, I was under the assumption that I was, I could just drop something off at the house. And so because I was working shorter hours, I would go in the middle of the day, and I knew that they were probably still doing school or doing something. So I would ring the doorbell, leave my thing there, and I would go around the corner so they didn't even see me.
When someone would ring the doorbell, I'd rush over to the door to see, and then finally one day I looked out the door and I saw her, and I was like, no, she's not getting away this time. So I ran out the door and I saw her. I was like, Miss Tracy! And so I ran over and we started talking, and so she told me that she rides horses, and I was like, hey, that's kind of like my favorite animal. Maybe sometime we can hang out. And so then it was started to become a friendship.
It was just the sweetest meeting. I mean, we may have hugged the first time, I don't know, but it was just it was just so thrilling because it had been a few months before we met each other, but it was really sweet.
I don't know how she knew this, but Starburst is one of my favorite candies, and she would always put Starburst in there, and she would have like a toy in there and then a little card, and then there's like something that can stick on your fridge that would be like follow God. And so like so I would read the card and it would be like, Dylan, you don't know how much I care about you, and even though you're going through these rough times, I know you can make it, and just you can do it, and just keep having a positive attitude. And that's was my favorite part about that stuff. And so one day I came out and I thought, hey, I just want to talk with her. I don't really care about the presents. So she comes out with a bag and I'm like, oh, and then she has cupcakes. And I'm like, oh, this is so nice. And then she's like, wait 1 second, and goes to her trunk. She pulls out a huge pizza and a huge thing of Sprite. And she's like, here you go. And I'm like, why are you giving this to me? She says, oh, lunch for you and your family. Turns out me and Trevor and my dad ate all the pizza before my mom and sister could. Don't tell them, though, because they have no idea.
It really changed, particularly Dylan, because he was struggling. He's like me. I need to connect with people. I need to hug people. I need to see people. I need to run around. He was having a hard time with Zoom, and I think just feeling like a kid. You don't have this freedom anymore, and you're confined to our house. And then, you're nervous because you're hearing people getting sick. And we were affected by, my husband working at a hospital and not really understanding what this pandemic was. And, grandma worked at a place that was high risk. And, our lives were flipped upside down. So with Dylan, it really turned into a lifeline for him. And as these things would show up, there would be a note in there, and you would just see him light up because he would read this note, and there was somebody outside of our home, outside of grandma, that was praying for him and encouraging him and giving him that hope that we're going to get through this, and that he was normal in what he was feeling. And they appreciated the little candies and games and things like that. But with Dylan, it was more that someone cared.
Well, sometimes we would just chat about stuff and school and how it was going. And there was a time or two that we talked about things that were significant that were going on in Dylan's life, and we had a chance to pray together. And yeah,
I told her some of the stuff that we talked about I wanted to keep between me and her, because it was stuff that I don't usually share with people. I felt like when we would come over and talk, it would be a moment where I can have a moment where I am just by myself with Miss Tracy, have an open heart, and just talk to her. And I felt so happy to get all the stuff that I needed to talk about out. And although I talk with my mom and dad, sometimes they don't have time. But even then, it's like when she would come over, instead of, here you go, I hope you like it, bye, and leaves, it would be, you want to talk. And so we would just talk, and it got to the point where I one time came out and I was sad, and I came out in tears because I think my uncle passed, and so it hurt a lot. And when I came outside, I was sad. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk. And usually my family, me and my sister, are like the ones that are trying to be happy, be creative and stuff. But with all that's happening, it's giving me stress. So I pretend everything's okay, but it's really not, and I'm hurting a lot. And so I came out one day and I'm talking to her and I bust out in tears telling her that what happened. And so then we just had a conversation and I went back inside and yeah, and something that's how I know that she's someone I can rely on. Someone that I can trust, that she's not going to go back and tell somebody, "Oh, this is Dylan's secret." No. She'll keep that and we have a bond. Instead of looking at all the negative stuff about me and feeling bad for me about that, she looks about the positive stuff. And she's like, "Look at this guy. He's creative, he's loving, he's kind." And that's like the stuff that makes me happy.
And so these Wednesday, ding dong sessions with Mrs. Tracy just gave him so much hope. And they really formed this beautiful connection where she became somebody that he could share some pretty deep stuff with that, as a parent, you hope, okay, if you can't tell mom, if you can't tell dad, I hope there's somebody that we trust that you can say, "Hey, this happened. Can you help me?" And she definitely became that. And, as a mom looking at this, okay, God, I know you have a plan for all this chaos. I don't understand, but I need help here. I can't be everything for everyone. I see my family is hurting, and God showed up by these people who signed up for a program, and maybe not knowing why, maybe not knowing what to purchase or what to write, but Mrs. Tracy would show up and Dylan would rush to the door, and then they're praying together. And when your child comes back in the house different than he left the house 5 minutes ago, it is such a blessing. And you go, okay, we will get through this.
When Dylan and I first started talking about real things, I would stand there and pray with him and for him. And I would go home and pray for him and his family. And the cards that I would send him, a lot of them would have prayers or prayers of encouragement or other kind of prayer attached to that he could keep with him. And I don't know if he read them over or whatever, but that I was praying for him and he had that in his hand in case he needed it or wanted to go back to it.
Every card that I found, every single card I put together and I leave it under my pillow. And so every night I open one and I read it, and then I shut it, and then I put it back. And every night it's that same process. And then when I didn't get any more cards, then it would be just read the same ones. And then I literally took all of them and put them right next to where my Bible is, and now I have them all right there. It was so impactful because we have conversations, it's the cards, the gifts, everything, and she shows up. And that's just the stuff that makes me think I really got a person who cares about me.
Kids have their parents, and his parents are great, and they love God, and they pour into him. Yet another adult from outside of your family, I know how important that can be. It was important for my kids to have, not that we have really a discipling relationship, but some other adult that can be your cheerleader and someone that you can go to when maybe you just really don't want to go to your parents for that. No matter how great they are, you want some other adult that can encourage you, that can challenge you, or watching over you. I thought, you give a little encouragement, a little gift, and you just leave, and that's all good. They'll be excited, they'll be happy. And it just was so much more than that. And I think because of the situation, especially with the pandemic, that it was more impactful than even if you just chose to do that for someone for no reason at all. And that's still fun when you have a person that's watching out for you and doing nice things for you. Just showing up when God calls you. You don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know what you're doing there. I mean, it just kind of sounded fun, and it was just way more than I thought it would be. So I think, yeah, just saying yes to God and holding your hands open and seeing what He's going to do with it, because it's always way more than you can imagine. The program that Melody and Marissa came up with was really a stroke of genius, and I think it was God ordained that we would have these kind of relationships, because I wouldn't have probably thought of it on my own, although it was right up my alley, and it's been so dear to my heart to get to know Dylan and to be able to pray for him and support him. And I hope we do have a long relationship as we learn to trust each other and yeah.
Praise God that she signed up for something, because I thought initially, oh, Melody paired us up because we were roommates when we went, when I was at the women's retreat. And then to find out like, oh, you were, I didn't even know that. And I go, oh, okay, that's how God orchestrated this. And it wasn't even that I overly got to know her at the retreat or anything, but it was enough that she was familiar, that I could trust my child who was struggling so much. And, there were really difficult times where, he was able to go out and meet with her and share, and they cried together and they prayed together. And then now, as we have resumed this a little bit of normal, back at church, and we're praying for middle schoolers, we look to her to say, please join us, because you're our community. You are a part of this village that's going to help, raise our children, as much as she wants to participate. But I trust her. And to see when we get to church, when he sees her, he runs to her, and he's, just so appreciative in his little 11-year-old, world of what that connection meant to him, and I think that's where, if you look, you go, okay, God, you have your hand in all of this. You are answering prayers, maybe not in the way that I would love to just stop all of this, but if we built something here that my son can hold on to and reflect back on and say, hey, that was a dark place, but look at how God showed up. I'll take it any day.
So truly, I feel like I don't need to say much at the end here. I feel like you have heard it. You've seen it. You have now been able to hear from, the creators of the program, to what it was like to get started in the program, to what it was like during, and some of the exchanges. And I got to tell you, I have 4 kids, and they were also online as the rest of the world was during this time. And as fine as they were with it, it was still a struggle. And like Marissa said, we wanted to do something more tangible, something that we could feel in our hands for these children during this time. And so my 4 kids, I'm going to share some pictures here with you. My 4 kids had some great adoptive student sponsors, and they just, as Monica said, the doorbell would ring and the 4 of them would go rushing to the door, or, would see something in the mail. My absolute favorite picture is this one of Abby when she got something at the door, and it was just, her face just tells it all right here. So thank you again to all of you who participated in this program. And what I'd love to highlight here is, when we hear about children, or we hear about young adults, or we hear about college students, or we hear about, this and that, sometimes it's easy Wouldn't you agree with me? Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, wow, that must be hard, or what an interesting time in their life, or, whatever it is. And it's easy to keep separate from them. It's easy to say, well, I'm done with the elementary school time in my life, or, I never really connected with, children as an adult, whatever. It's almost easy to stay apart. But that's not how we were designed. That's not how we're made. We're supposed to invest in each other. We're supposed to be together, to connect together. We are supposed to do these things. As Tracy said, she said, you know what? It was what I could handle at the time. She said, I didn't even know what was to come of it. I actually thought I was going to get a little girl instead of get a little boy. But she said, I didn't know what was going to be the outcome of this. And she is just so thankful, and we are so thankful for the outcome of this. And all she did was show up. All she did was show up. And then later, if you notice, Dylan said the same thing. Dylan said, Tracy showed up. Tracy showed up. And then Monica said the same thing later. She said, she was there for my kid. It was someone outside of this bubble. It was someone outside of this little circle that they've been living in. She showed up. And so that is the point here. That is the point. We get to show up. And so, Monica said again, it made them feel human. It was a lifeline for Dylan. And these interviews actually happened very independently of one another. Not one person saw the other person's interview. Monica wasn't in the room when I interviewed Tracy and Dylan. Marissa wasn't around. They were all filmed independently of each other, but you'll see the themes that go across each interview. You'll see that they said God orchestrated these connections. There's nothing that Marissa and I did. We didn't put 1 and 2 together sometimes. We just matched people up. Tracy said God orchestrated this. Monica said God orchestrated this. Even the story of the pizza. It was on a day where Dylan was feeling kind of down, and then Tracy shows up with pizza and soda and cupcakes. Apparently, Tracy is a very good baker. We all need to try some of your cupcakes, Tracy. But as I said, we instead of being separated, instead of taking perhaps the easier road, the point is connection. The point is you belong to me and I belong to you, and I want to care for you. And what we get back reciprocated from us is a relationship. And from those relationships, bonds are formed. So, I think Tracy and Monica both said this, that it takes a village. It takes a village, and that is a famous expression. It takes a village to raise a child. And I will tell you, firsthand experience, yes, it does. I want you in my child's life, and I want to be in yours. Or, if you're a young adult, whatever it is, there's so much connection to be had. There's so much connection to be had. I'm going to read you this verse from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8. And this is when Paul is talking to the church in Thessalonica, and he is saying, hey, remember when I was here? He said in verse 8, we cared so much for you that we were pleased to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own lives, because you had become very dear to us. You had become very dear to us. So again, they knew the importance of connection. They knew the importance of a bond. They knew the importance of stepping out and showing up. And then later on in that same chapter, in verse 19, it says, for who is our hope or joy in the crown of boasting in the presence of our Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not you? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and joy. You are our glory and joy, this community, this bond, this thing that we share. So I encourage you, however, if you have someone that you've just has been on your heart lately that you want to connect with, or, maybe there's neighborhood kids in your street. As Grant said, don't be creepy about it, right? Because you don't want to be the neighborhood creeper. But, there's ways to go about this. Ask us. There's ways to go about this to make connection. As Monica put it, it was hard for me to see the hope. It was hard for me to see beyond what I was going through. We've all gone through stuff and continue to do so. It was hard for me to see the hope. But this little connection, this small acts of generosity and kindness and taking a little bit out of her day brought hope to not only Dylan as a child, but hope to Monica, hope to her heart, hope to her family's heart. And she said it well, from one week to the next to the next. God will give us hope with someone, through someone, and you can be that hope for someone else.